Now we have Alec. Alec, I don't know if you listen me now, and you put your camera on. Alec comes from the wait a minute because I have here Alec from CEFLEX. This morning Adam mentioned you on his presentation, so I think I don't have to present you more. Alec is one of the work stream consultant in CEFLEX, so he's going to explain a little bit the ways and how you are presenting the flexible packaging in the future. So go on your presentation.
Great, thank you very much, and thanks to Adam, Sonia, and Axel this morning for some interesting presentations. So I'll try and keep a little eye on the time, Maria, and you let me know. Firstly, can you see my screen okay? You're seeing the correct screen, not the presenter view, I hope.
Yes, we can see your presentation.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Super. So obviously the circular economy for flexible packaging, this is something that we need to do together, and CEFLEX is very much kind of grown up as the initiative around this. And what I'm just going to go through what CEFLEX is and who participates quickly, a few of the pieces of the puzzle that we're putting together or trying to put together, and answer those questions where we don't have the answers just yet and what we need to do. And then really try and highlight around a few of those items what it is we can be doing. So first of all, for CEFLEX, one of the first things we need to do in a circular economy, I think it's achieving a circular economy is as much about changing mindsets and collaboration and understanding across a value chain as much as innovation and delivery. So CEFLEX has emerged as this value chain collaborative platform. And I think one of the first major deliverables that we can give is that flag, that destination that we all need to be trying to get to. And that's our mission circular, and our timeline for that is to achieve that by the end of 2025. And I think, well, Axel just mentioned a number of regulatory issues that are coming onto stream right now. Adam this morning also mentioned that a lot of brand owners also making sort of promises for recyclability and recycled content and for 2025. And I think that, you know, we want to give it a sense of urgency and pushing very hard to achieve it. So we've grown up out of a few different initiatives, but these are how we split out the value chain from material producers right down to the flexible packaging ecosystem. And obviously we're very pleased to have people like CITEO, other EPRs and technology providers in that ecosystem as well. The idea here is just to sort of say that we do need a certain tipping point and a critical mass to make a circular economy happen, and we feel like we have achieved that now. So what does it look like? I spoke about collaboration and mindset change being one of the key challenges for delivering a circular economy as much as innovation and delivery. Well, that kind of North Star for us is a 5-point roadmap. And we are perhaps well known for work on design and trying to understand the market, but we are putting a considerable amount of effort behind each one of these 5 points and working on them in parallel to make sure that all of these moving pieces come together to help create that circularity. Collection, sorting and recycling, redesign, facilitating technologies and solutions, and then obviously very importantly the end markets and business cases for all of these different potential scenarios. And so collection, we understand where it's being collected or not. We can show the mechanisms and pathways to successful sorting and recycling at scale for flexible packaging and know where that's happening. Redesign, we obviously have guidelines, and this is a work in progress. And I'll talk a little bit about technology and markets in this presentation. So that roadmap is the sort of point, articulating that point that we want to get to, but the mechanics behind that roughly come into three distinct building blocks: design, the infrastructure and systems, and then the business case. And these are the kind of three pillars that we're building around and connect to the steps in the roadmap. And I've just highlighted a couple of initiatives there as well: the design guidelines, process and technologies, and then obviously extended producer responsibility. And it was great to have Axel speaking just before, and that's obviously a key part of making circularity happen. So I'll tackle these one by one. Flexible packaging being designed. Our Designing for a Circular Economy guidelines were launched in June this year, and we have a range of independent testing and subgroups dedicated to specific structures and outline questions. So this is independent testing done to fill in the gaps where we don't already have the knowledge. The good news is that we do have a pretty good idea of what constitutes good design. We're not the only design guidelines, but what I would say is this circular economy, and coming back to that collaboration mindset and understanding, these guidelines have been put together by hundreds of stakeholders, giving thousands and thousands of bits of feedback. This is about, the whole process was about building that understanding and finding out what is possible, what is the best you can give me from various different points on the value chain. And I think these guidelines have obviously been incorporated by a number of big brands and across the supply chain. And I think that's a sort of an indication of a central point, a safe ground where everyone can be doing the best possible landing. And so I would really advise you to, if you haven't already consulted them, get on board with these guidelines, download them. There's a number of different elements available to pass those on to your packaging design teams and CEOs. So obviously some markets are more advanced than others. I think part of this 360-degree picture and the circular economy was about not just the design requirements, but matching that with end of life. So I know that Eco-Embers also give a very good insight and have a tool about trying to see what happens in this end of life stage of packaging. But you know, this is not everywhere and for everyone. So this is very much the two sides of the coin to designing for a circular economy in the guidelines. As I said, if you haven't already, there's some very useful technical overviews, full reports, and some executive summaries for you to get hold of. What do they hope to achieve? I think this is to give clarity, to increase the levels of collection, sorting, and recycling, and then obviously boost the quality of the recycled materials to keep into the economy. And design is something that the packaging industry itself can take care of. This is something within the control of a lot of people that are part of the CEFLEX consortium, and it's impressive to see the application being made. And there's some real front runners driving this and embracing the guidelines in Nestle, Henkel, Unilever. And I think that this is a key part. This is a box that we have to tick, and we have to tick quickly. So hopefully now the catalyst is to spread these benefits throughout the whole value chain. And so what can we be doing around design? I think it's review your packaging portfolios against the guidelines, further support the rollout and adoption of the guidelines within your organizations. Obviously, you're a very active cluster and have some very interesting connections around the packaging cluster, connecting with each other as well around these guidelines upstream and downstream as well. The phase 2 testing to gain independent, robust, and credible data where we don't have it is underway. There's been a sort of couple of small delays with the COVID, but we're marching on with that and very, very active now. And there is a huge amount of buy-in and support to answering those questions where we don't already have them and ironing out some of those differences and details. But, you know, the main direction of travel is there, and it's time to engage and deliver on better flexible packaging design. In terms of the second building block, infrastructure and systems, we need to be able to collect, sort and recycle it back into usable materials. And some of the points here on this slide show what we're doing in this space. We've built a good market understanding, and we're proving which end markets can use recycled materials, film to film, film to rigid. And the step that we're really deep into now, and we have making some real advances here, also in collaboration with the University of Ghent, but also a number of different stakeholders, and is about mapping the size of each of these markets and understanding the eligible recycled materials, so getting those material flows. And then obviously we want to make the new technologies that can help facilitate this. So in terms of the CEFLEX scope, which is post-consumer flexible packaging, this is where we are, about 4.1 million tons. You'll see on this as well, increasingly, there is this 4.3 on the other side. And I think that we'll see in terms of some of the work of CEFLEX now looking into the infrastructure and systems, we're increasingly thinking that we maybe have to look at this as a bigger picture as well. But for our 4.1 million tons, there's obviously a bulk of monomaterial, but also blends, and also monomaterials in terms of paper and aluminium, etc. And I think it's also worth noting that CEFLEX is material agnostic. So we're really looking at all of those different types. Whilst plastic might be predominant, we're looking at all of those different blends as well, as soon as it becomes flexible packaging. So if we look at the scope of consumer flexible packaging, this is roughly the kind of percentages based on that latest data of what falls into consumer flexible packaging and CEFLEX scope. But you can still see that there's a lot out there. And that's perhaps where we're also thinking about ourselves looking into the entire sort of value chain and beyond, and forming new understandings and new collaborations, and also looking at what do we do with these things, and do we have some common solutions and problems for some of this commercial production scrap, etc. So how do we keep those materials in the economy, and which end markets can these recycled materials be used for? Well, one of the big things is about improving the quality. And so keeping these and finding better quality applications. So I won't dwell too much on these two slides, but we're at pilot stage and now moving into industrial stage trials for a quality recycling process to improve this for flexible packaging. So there's the two processes for PP and PE. And I think I'll just skip straight to this. We have shown that it is possible to get flexible packaging back to non-food flexible packaging through mechanical recycling. And you can see some of the applications there in collation shrink wrap, pouches, labels, and these showing that this is possible now at industrial scale trial is obviously an essential step. And there will be an e-booklet that resumes this quality recycling process from a variety of perspectives, launching early December. Here I've just put some of the markets that we're obviously trying to map that against, injection and film, but also those applications, and trying to see, well, what is possible, and what can we do with some of these higher value applications, or indeed all applications. And so the process that we're going through right now is looking at the business case, looking at the process, looking at the end markets, and then trying to bring these two together in multiple scenarios and mapping what those are. What are the market size? What capacity do we have? What capacity do we need? Very importantly, also, especially for food grade, what are going to be the splits between mechanical recycling and chemical recycling? And increasingly there also, we're trying to sort of connect with other players like PCEP, which is the polyolefin circular economy organization, to map some of these, so we're not counting things twice. Obviously, technology innovation is always cited as being a kind of a magic bullet or promised by industry a lot. There is always quite a good selection of technologies out there. I think the watchword for CEFLEX is it's about quality, not quantity. We obviously have a certain amount of resources, but this is our innovation pipeline and our process. And it's done with and in collaboration with all of our stakeholders who help us to do this. And they're an active part of scouting the solutions, engaging with them. And so at that engaged stage, it might be mentoring, deep dives, challenging. It might even be that they're taking an equity stake or supporting these companies increasingly financially beyond the sort of seed funds that CEFLEX might be able to give. So Cadell, De-inking and Sepratech, two of those companies. And then we've got really the kind of things that are very much mature on the CEFLEX radar and extremely promising pathways. So Holy Grail, the open source digital watermarking, is something we've been on board with from the very beginning. And also our understanding of chemical recycling is, like the sector itself, evolving. It's something that we monitor very closely, and looking at obviously our target being 2025, there is some moving parts there about exactly what might come on stream before that deadline. So what can we do together? So we're proving this quality recycling at industrial scale. So I would invite you to sort of follow that, consult the e-booklet coming out in December. We'll have further insight onto the markets coming through in sort of February, first quarter next year. So it's worth also following perhaps our LinkedIn page or Twitter feed for this kind of information. We're looking to understand and integrate the chemical recycling capabilities into our circular economy pathways. And then all those promising technologies, make sure that they reach the scale quickly and effectively. So the business case, obviously the critical part of this, this jigsaw. We're reaching a relatively mature understanding of this in CEFLEX. It's not my particular area of expertise, so whilst I'm happy to answer your questions as best as I can, I'm just going to try and outline the sort of key parts of what we're looking at here. First of all, it's about understanding the costs and benefits of going circular and how much is that going to cost. And then another key part on the financing is obviously the EPR schemes. So our cost models, benchmarking with people like Suez and Deloitte, this is roughly what we're looking at right now. And these cost models will also be able to be mapped onto different countries to be able to look at different specificities. But obviously you can see a sort of a generic outline of costs of collection, sorting and recycling with a high, low and medium estimation there per ton. So those assumptions and those models that we're working on mapping all the different moving parts of the circular economy, one big system answer to this is obviously EPR, and Axel EPR system themselves already outlined a little bit about how that functions, but it's obviously extremely important to making the circular economy happen. So, you know, what's collected, what's graded, how it's supplied, recycling the polymers, the EPR gives the answer to that. So it is a key part of realizing the circular economy and making it sustainable in practice, financially, on many different levels. And I think when we look at EPR from our point of view, we are looking at it operationally, financially, governance, but also in terms of communication and outreach. Lots of fantastic stuff done, EcoEmbes and CITEO on those kind of areas. So the development that we're working on right now in CEFLEX is taking the consumer goods form paper, working on it with all our different brand owners and looking at the key criteria for circularity and matching that against our roadmap, our understanding and our work to try and help define an EPR system broadly that that can help adopt circularity as quickly as possible. So we're in the stage now where we're sort of fine-tuning, testing, and applying cost models. We're developing a kind of much better vision for how does EPR help achieve our roadmap for a circular economy and make it sustainable. And we're looking at building out the circularity criteria attached to EPR and getting buy-in at the top level and hoping that will trickle down at the various representations around Europe and the EPR schemes there. So we've got quite a lot of the pieces. Where we don't have the pieces, we've got a fairly good idea what we need to be working on. And we've got several investigations going really deep on material flows, collection, compositional analysis, looking at really what is in there, independent testing, working with some fantastic universities, consultancies, and our stakeholders, obviously, in a number of different ways to sort of fill in the pieces of the puzzle. But we've got the guidelines in place. Phase 2, answering those questions with independent, robust testing up and running. We've got a good understanding of the market and the material flows. And we've got this very sort of interesting set of applications and industrial trials and quality recycling process. And then obviously that final bit on EPR that I just mentioned. So it really is sort of advancing. The stakeholders within CEFLEX are driving us on, but also broader industry consortium and collaboration. And we need everyone on board and driving forward, because this is a little bit of a kind of a retro planning of achieving our goals. Look like we're at a crunch time. We really need to get a lot done now in the next sort of 12, 24 months, because if those recycling lines and sorting centers are going to come on and those end markets are going to develop and those technologies are going to reach this necessary scale, now is the key implementation period. And obviously Axel just mentioned the raft of different legislations that are kind of going on out there as well. You know, we need to innovate and move quickly and deliver this. And there is a real sort of momentum happening inside CEFLEX and beyond. And whilst we don't need everyone to be a CEFLEX stakeholder, we do need to have your buy-in and to embrace a vision of circularity and helping to deliver that. So I think that's essential, and organizations like yourselves at the packaging cluster are vital to making that happen. So that's the overview. I know that we've had a fairly sort of short amount of time, so I'll leave it there. The one thing I will say to you is connect with us on our LinkedIn page. We'll have, I think that's probably the best way, or Twitter if that's your chosen poison. And I think that we look forward to connecting with you there. And if you're already part of a stakeholder organization in CEFLEX, you know, connect with those people that are representatives within CEFLEX, get to know us better, get to know the guidelines, and we look forward to having you on board as part of this journey.
Thank you, Alec. I think we have some members that are members from CEFLEX also. Absolutely. So yes, thank you to be here. We have some questions, maybe are a little bit tricky, but I will read to you. They are from Sergio Scoriet, that he is listening to us from YouTube because he couldn't enter on the Zoom. He asked that why only look at the monomaterial structures on the recycling or on the future of flexible packaging?
Well, we absolutely don't only look at monomaterial structures, so that's a fairly sort of quick and easy answer. Obviously, the monomaterial structures are easier to design for recycling and give that quality. So for multi-material structures, we look at these very, very closely. There's a huge amount of guidance inside the guidelines. And where there are multi-materials that have some obviously extremely beneficial properties, but are perhaps more difficult to recycle, those are part of our phase 2 testing. And this is a huge effort with 15 subgroups, vast amounts of testing programs. So we really do look at all of those different types of packaging structures, whilst certainly looking to create the biggest through flow of easy to recycle materials.
Also, he said that what about recycling and de-lamination of existing structures and recycling in the individual plastics involved in multi-layer? So I think he's asking to have recycling in lamination in the structures.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not the most technical member of the team, but I mean, these are huge opportunities, and we are looking at all different types of recycling. Obviously, we're trying to move fast, and so developing the infrastructure and improving the infrastructure we have right now is a focus. But we also have, you saw in the facilitating technologies, 2 of our key things are in de-inking and delamination with Cadell and Seprotec. So these are huge areas of focus for us, and will continue to be. We also look at everything up to including chemical recycling, but there's also various different types of recycling in the middle that show big potential in those fields. So those are very much on our radar, and indeed part of our key parts of our innovation pipeline that we support financially, with governance, with mentoring, and these kind of schemes.
Great. Another question that it's related with this is about the colorful plastics. How can you get recycled colorless materials? Like if they have ink on this material in this packaging, how do you do with this kind of products?
Well, obviously, I guess each case is can be different in terms of the different blends. I'm neither the most sort of technical person on the design phase or without a kind of a particular blend. What I would say is check the guidelines. They give clear sort of percentages of all of the different elements, and also guidance on things like colors. So I would say go back to the guidelines and check there for what we've considered as being best for circularity and acceptable right now as part of a huge value chain collaboration to define where those limits are. I think you're muted.
So yes, so Alec, as I was saying, thank you very much for being here. We don't have, I think, more questions, but for sure it will become more questions after your presentation, for sure. So I will share with you I will share with the attendants the presentation, and also if we have some questions, I will ask to you by email or something, and maybe we can share with them also. Perfect.
Yes. If you have more technical questions or inquiries, then I'd be happy to find the right persons and come back to you with in-depth response. And thank you for having us here. And we'll be following the work of the packaging cluster closely, and hope that you'll also engage with us at CEFLEX.
Thank you very much, Alex.